Hello and welcome to Game Time, the fourth episode of our podcast right here at New Era. My name is Marco Ndlovu. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for all the feedback that you have given us. I hope you enjoyed the 3 episodes that we've had so far. And today we continue again with a different person in terms of what we had last week. We had Woody Jacobs last week, the coach, the former Brave Warriors coach. This time around we've got Peter Haufiku. He's a former basketball player. He's a former football player.
Yeah.
He's a player agent, and that's what he does nowadays, ever since he retired. I don't know why he retired at a young age, but he's a player agent. We get to sit down with him and get to chat to him, get to know what he likes, what he does, and what kind of job he's doing for the players, and so on and so forth. But before you do that, please make sure that you like all our social media pages and follow us there, and make sure that you give us comments on what we are doing right here. Peter,
yes,
welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for allowing us to sit down with you and talk to you. Who's Peter? Tell us, who's Peter Haufiku?
Peter Haufiku. Where do I start? Well, my name is Peter Haufiku. I'm from Namibia. However, I grew up outside. So I was actually born in Germany, grew up in Belgium, studied in South Africa, in Finland, Scotland, and then more recently in Spain. So after traveling the world, I decided to come back home and implement what it is that I've studied.
What made you come back home?
I just always was gonna come home. Like as I've said, I'm 29 years old now. I've lived 20 years outside, so in all those different countries. So I always saw myself as a foreigner in another person's country. It wasn't never really the people around me. They never really made me feel like that, but it was always, when you had to go and apply for visas, apply for school, all of these type of things. And, you never really feel like you belong. And every single time I would come home, it's just home. Home is just home. So I always wanted to come back.
Being born in Germany.
Yes.
And feeling like a foreigner in Germany.
Yes. I mean, technically I was born in Germany, but I only lived there till I was 3. So I don't have much memory of Germany.
Okay.
So after I was 3, my parents moved back to Namibia. We stayed here until I was 9 years old, and then that's when I moved to Belgium initially.
So you feel more Namibian than German?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Even though sometimes, when you're born outside and you live outside and you come back home, you end up being a foreigner in your own country. People would be like, oh, you don't know this, you don't know that, you don't speak the language, you don't do this. And somehow you feel like a foreigner when you're outside because you are a foreigner, but then also when you're at home, there's also that distance and that gap. But now that I've been home, it's almost, 3 years now, I'm finally feeling like, okay, yeah, I'm home.
I'm home, okay.
Yeah.
Having lived in all these countries in Europe,
yes,
and learned in all these countries in Europe,
yes,
you come back here. What distinctions did you put in terms of the lifestyle, the culture, the mannerisms, the behaviors?
There's definitely a lot. One of them being time. Going there, if you're 5 minutes early, you're late, technically. So, coming back here and I'd be like 5 minutes late and technically I'm early. So there's that whole dynamic of that. And then also just the shift of mentally how people think in terms of, what I do. With sports and all of that, it seems quite, out of the box. Whereas, in most European countries, it's very normal. So I always encourage people to not try and, reinvent the wheel, but rather go outside, travel, see what's normal outside, and then try and see how you can find a gap here back home.
Your sporting life, you haven't told us anything about your sporting life.
Okay.
You are born in Germany, you
yes,
grew up there, you come to Namibia until you're 9, then you go back. Where did you go back? Was it Spain?
Okay, let me just put it into perspective. So born in Germany, lived there till I was 3 years old, moved back to Namibia, stayed here for about 6 years until I was 9. Then that's when we officially moved to Belgium. So Belgium is where I spent the majority of my life. So I was there at 9, and then I left at 21. So I went through elementary school, middle school, high school. I grew up in Belgium, which was a suburb outside of Brussels. I went to school at St. John's International School. So we had friends and grew up with people from all over the world, which was also really good. Although that stability of being there between 9 and 21 gave me that solid base. The friends that I still have till today. These are people that I grew up with, people that I grew extremely close with. From Belgium, I then came back to study in South Africa. So I was there for 1 year. I was supposed to complete my bachelor's degree there, which was in sports management. However, my dad got an opportunity to go to Finland. That's when I now looked into studying in Finland. They had, sports management. It was in English, and it was free. So back then they had, I think 2017 is when they cut that off, but all education was free for everybody.
In Finland?
In Finland.
Wow.
So this is something that we didn't even know about. I only knew because my dad got that opportunity, and then I started looking into it. So you pay zero for your tuition.
You just show up.
The only thing, you just show up, you pay your accommodation and your pocket money. That's about it. So that was a great opportunity for me. It was very forward thinking as well. The way Finnish education is, renowned, worldwide known as, one of the best. What they do is they basically involve the student in their own learning. So I'm used to, you go to class, and then, the teacher says, okay, semester 1 we're doing this, semester 2, blah, 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 all of that. But then you go to Finland and they say, okay, semester 1 and 2, you're doing this, but then there's 2 weeks within each semester. What do you want to study? And all students would be like, what's going on?
So you have to choose what you want to study.
So you choose what you want to study. The teacher or the lecturer then goes to do the research and then comes back to teach you what you wanted to study. So that's a different mentality, whereby now when you fail an exam, you can't, because this is what you wanted to study. So it was just a complete shift. It was a complete shift. Over there, you don't say miss or ma'am, you call them by their first name. You go to class whenever it is that you want. You graduate whenever you want, which is a crazy thing to me, because I'm used to deadlines to say, if you don't get this done by this date, you fail. Whereas for them, they're like, no, these are the 2 main graduation dates. These are the dates that we have the ceremony. But if you want to graduate a month, 2, 3 months later, you can. That's automatically fine. The choice is yours. So that kind of gives us that different, and that's what I'm talking about.
It relieves pressure from
It relieves pressure, but then sometimes you can also fall into that thing of, okay, I'll just do it next month, and then never end up doing it. You'll procrastinate. So so that was me in Finland, completed my bachelor's degree there. But while I was there, I also did exchange programs. So I went to Scotland for a year. That's where I studied sports science. So I did the sports and leisure management in Finland, and then I specialized for a year in Scotland with sports science.
Okay, hold it there.
Yes.
Sports science.
Yes.
We lack that in this country.
Yeah, we definitely do. We definitely do. But we do have a specialist.
We'll get back to that.
Get him on. So I specialized in sports science for that year, but that was just an exchange program that was linked to my university. Why I did that was because I always wanted to I knew it was sports that I wanted to be in, right? But I just didn't know exactly which category or where within sports I fill in. So I decided to study and do everything. So while I was also studying in Finland and then also did my exchange in Scotland, I used to come back to Namibia to work at the Sports Commission. I was an intern. So our summer holidays would be June, July, and a little bit of August. So I would always come back to Namibia. That's where I started working with Mr. Freddie Muya. Met a few people, Miss Manuel at the ministry as well. So I came back as a second and a third year student. So I always wanted to learn. And when I was not learning in school, I never really went on holiday. I would just come home and then basically, try and learn the local ecosystem. Because it's easy to stay out there and know what they do there. But then once you come home, it's very hard to implement something that you don't understand.
There's a disconnect.
Exactly. So I made sure that I came back for my internships. After my internships and after I graduated, there was a bit of a gap. There was now a year that I had to basically wait before doing my master's. My father, who luckily was an ambassador, he had a lot of kids, or has a lot of kids. So I can't now come and say, hey, I want to do this master's program and then, expect him to cover the bill fully. So what he told me was, listen, this is my budget. If you can make up the rest, that's good.
It's good, yeah.
So within that year, I applied to Real Madrid Graduate School. It was one of those things where it was just a shot in the dark. I had no idea I was going to get in. I actually didn't think I was going to get in. And then I just applied. And then I got the interview. In the interview process, I told them, listen, I'm going to be the first Namibian to come to this university. They just started laughing. And then 2 weeks later, I got my official letter to say, you have been accepted to the university. But now the bill for that university was extremely high.
I can imagine.
And now we're used to, that free university and, all of that. So when that bill came, I presented it to my father. He said, I can only cover about half of this. Now it came up to me to say, okay, how do I come up with the other half? What I ended up doing was finding the first job that I could possibly find. In Europe, people always think that it's, glitz and glamour and all great and, sunshine and rainbows. But at the end of the day, if you're not really from there, you don't necessarily speak the language well enough, there's only a certain category of work that you can do. So I found a company called Fresca, where we cleaned houses and toilets, basically. So
like a
housekeeper, like a housekeeper, yeah. So I would go basically from house to house, cleaning houses. So some house would be maybe like 2 hours cleaning. Some houses will be like 3 or 4 hours, depending on how big the house is. So I would basically, be on my phone, checking the GPS, running between trains, catching a bus here, making sure that you're on time. And how that company worked and how they paid you was based off of ratings. And ratings, if you're a minute late, if you're maybe 5 minutes late, you can get a bad rating and then you get less money. So we always had to be there on time. I was cleaning houses, basically for a year, right? And I saved up, it was 10,000 euros.
That you saved up from cleaning houses?
From cleaning houses, because I did that from Monday until Saturday. And I only didn't work Sunday because we were not allowed to work Sundays. So the whole day, some days I would go like maybe 15-hour shifts, sometimes 10-hour shifts, sometimes 3-hour shifts, depending on the schedule, depending on the schedule and depending on the demand. So if no one wants anybody for that day, you don't have a job for that day. So it was one of those things where honestly, that was my goal. I needed to go to Real Madrid. I've been a Real Madrid fan ever since I was 8 years old. I told myself there is no other way. No other way. I have to do it. I fell short in terms of the half, meeting him halfway, because the full tuition was about 26,000 euros. I fell a bit short because I only got the 10, but my father just saw how much I had worked. He saw every single day. I would come in, I would leave early before he goes, I would come back late, and he was just like, no, I'm going to cover the rest. So it was one of those things where I went there, I studied, I graduated with a few distinctions, and fast forward to moving back home. Moved back home. Of course, the first thing to do is to look for work. However, there was no jobs that time. It was COVID. I was in Spain during COVID as well. So I was there during the epicenter. When it was the epicenter of COVID. It was March 2020. We were just told, listen, go home for 2 weeks. You'll be able to come back. And then 2 weeks led to 4 weeks. 4 weeks led to 6 weeks. Until my dad said, no, come back to Finland. And then that's when I completed my degree online. So we had 10 modules that we basically had to do. Out of the 10 modules, I got 5 distinctions. And then the other 5, which was now when we had to go online, it was a little bit tricky. So the other 5 modules, unfortunately, I just passed. But the funny thing about it is I failed one of those modules and I had to take a retake. Now, when I had to take the retake and I did more research on it, that was the course for sports agencies. So now, because I had failed it, but just because I wasn't paying attention, I took the retake. Now, when I was taking the retake and I started studying and I said, wow, we actually don't have this back home. Then I started to delve into it a little bit more, and guess who my lecturer was? Luka Modric's agent. Still till today, I have him on my phone. We contact each other here and there. He's kind of a mentor for me as well. He's the CEO of Arawana Sports, and he represents Luka Modric, Regulon. I don't know if you know him. He plays for United now, and a few other players as well across Spain and across Europe. So this guy is huge there, top tier. So once I realized that, and even though I had failed, I reached out to him. I said, sir, this is something that I really want to do. Can you please help me with this? I came to him with the idea. He told me, no, you can do this, you can do that. Don't charge the players too much or don't charge them too early. Just different strategies in terms of how to set up the company, who to hire, what to do. And that's basically the birth of EPSA 27, my sports agency.
Okay, now talking about you as a sports person,
yes.
Which sports court did you play or did you partake in? How did the sports bug bite you? Everybody talks about the sports bug biting them. How did it bite you?
For me, it was one of those things where, as I mentioned, I lived in a lot of different countries, but the only consistent thing in my life was sports. So when you're now moving from, let's say, Belgium to Finland or to Scotland, they don't really care about your skin color. They don't really care about if you speak the language or not. It's can you play? So for me, that's why I gravitated more towards sports. But I started playing sports, let's say, around about when I was here. So as early as I can remember. Started playing football, of course. Played a little bit of rugby, but that kind of died down quite early. Got one bad tackle and I just decided, no, this is not for me. And then when I went to Belgium, that's when I started playing a little bit more basketball. So I played both until about 16. And then I had to retire from football at age 16. But mainly because I wanted to focus more on basketball and I wanted to focus on studying sports. And I was very lucky to have known my passion a lot earlier than what most people do.
Playing basketball in Europe,
yes.
What were the lessons there?
Initially it was in Belgium where I started. The highest level that I played was in Finland, Division 3. So that's about semi-professional. We went undefeated. We got, that time I think they were in Division 4 or 5, and then we went undefeated 2 years in a row, and then we jumped to third division, and then unfortunately I graduated, and I just couldn't continue. But different lessons that you would learn through sports is discipline, consistency, knowing the rules, how to kind of play with the rules, because it's rules of a game, but then you have rules in life. So if you can figure out how to play within the rules within a game, you can then translate that to real life. Obviously then you have how to win. Are you a good winner? Are you somebody that rubs it in each other's faces? Are you somebody that is a bad winner? How to lose as well, because there's a lot of adversity when it comes to sports as well. So it's how to bounce back from that as well that really did play a big role in my life. And even till today, I still play for the UNAM Rebels, although I don't have necessarily as much time now as I did before. But I'm hoping that next year I'll actually be a little bit more consistent. But this year we won the championship here in Namibia. So technically I'm a champ still. I still kind of play. But it's just more of a hobby. Mainly because of my career. Even though I do have a sports agency and I am technically an agent, I also lecture at the university as well. So I'm a lecturer at NAST, where I lecture sports management subjects. I lecture fundamentals of marketing, consumer behavior in sports. I also lecture sports psychology and sports sociology. So all of these subjects, kind of keep me busy in terms of that. But also it helps me because I get to influence directly the next generation of sports people here in Namibia. Hopefully my perspective and my international expertise can then, spark something in somebody to make a big change here in Namibia.
Now, as a player agent, you spoke about working with Luka Modric's agent.
Yes.
You yourself as a player agent in Namibia, football player agent for that matter.
Yes.
There's not a lot of you.
Yes.
I think I can count you in one hand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you sat down with other local player agents? You discuss, the market. You discuss the fundamentals of the game. You discuss how you can improve the profession and so on and so forth.
Not necessarily here in Namibia. I've spoken to one other agent, but it was just in passing, and just because I was scouting younger players, and he was a father of one of the players that were playing, so we just had a conversation on the side, and that's about it. But internationally, on my travels, I have done that in terms of reaching out to other agents to try and see how they do that. But our local market is basically dominated by foreign agents. So as much as we want to say, we can sit with Namibians around the table, but a lot of Namibian agents have not taken players out. It's a lot of international agents that come in and basically scout our players and then take them out.
But then you guys coming together and sitting together, would that not
it would
put you in a pedestal or an advantage to say, even the players will say, no, let me not go for a foreign agent. Let me go for somebody from home who understands me, who understands my problems, who understands my struggles, and they can negotiate a deal that really suits me.
Yeah. No, that's something that we definitely are open to. However, the agents are... how do I explain this?
You see each other as competition?
Not really, because I don't really see them at all. Because, if you go to the NFA right now, they would say I'm the only agent because I'm the only one to have come to them with my agent license and basically that they know of me. So the database is not necessarily there. So I don't even know where to reach out for other agents as well.
But when the NFA, probably need to reach out to the NFA and find out from them as well.
Yeah.
How do they deal with the player movements if they don't have a database of agents?
Exactly.
It raises a lot of questions.
Yeah, but then again, because we didn't need a database earlier because there was no regulations in terms of agents. So people basically a parent can be an agent, a family member, whoever it is can be an agent, whereas now it only got implemented this year. So you can understand why that gap is, because there was never any rules before, whereas now there is a strict guideline as with regards to how to move players and when to move players as well.
So what does the job of an agent entail? Like, take us from the basic until the top tier.
Okay, basic, jobs. Our job is to try and get professional contracts for our players. At the end of the day, we want, initially we want our players here, but it's not professional enough. They don't make enough money to sustain themselves. And the salaries range from like 1,000 Namibian dollars, 1.5 to 6,000, where 6,000 is a good salary for a player. But that's not necessarily enough to live day to day, as we know, in terms of rents, food, transportation, everything. So so initially, first we're supposed to try and get them professional contracts. So my job is to try and get them out of Namibia for now, until the industry catches up, and then we can hopefully keep them here and professionalize the sports as a whole. Secondly, we look out for the well-being of the player in terms of, are they okay? Do they have the right boots? Do they, are they okay? How's the family situation and all of that? And then we try and look after their money as well, in terms of trying to help them open portfolios, investment portfolios, trying to look at life after sports while you're still playing the sport. Because we see a lot of players, who retire and have no plan. They have absolutely no plan. They have no savings. They have no money. I had a player who asked me for visa money. So that's something that I don't want our players to get into, and we're trying to do that. So how we've tried to do that is we try to get them into a financial situation where they can think differently about the money, whereas they working for the money now, but then they initially at the end have the money work for them. We don't always continuously want to work for the money, because football is a young man's sport. Unfortunately, by the time players are 38, 40, 40 is even pushing it. We see the Cristianos and the Messis doing it, and we think it's normal. But how they take care of their body, the nutrition, how they train, how they sleep.
Why don't we teach our local players the same standards that Messi them are doing?
Exactly. So that's also what we try and do, in terms of getting them in contact with somebody like a Garen, to prolong everything, to prolong their career, so that they can actually do that more. But there is a lot more research now in terms of sports, so the athletes do actually last longer than what the previous athletes have done in the past.
Now, as an agent, are you the mother and the father of the player? In quotation marks.
In quotation marks. I don't have any kids, but I know what you mean. But what we try and do is, I think our unique selling point is the fact that we are local, we are licensed, and also we involve the family in every decision. So with a lot of our players, we have a WhatsApp group, and within that WhatsApp group, we ask them for one or two people that they really feel needs to be in there. So some people might have their brother, some people might have their parents, some people might have their cousin, somebody who they know always has their best interest at heart. So we consult them with every single decision we make. Every email that we send to any team, we send it first into the group. Listen, guys, is this okay? Is this reflecting what you're thinking and what you want to say? And then we send it out, so that teams can't now come to the player directly and say, listen, this is what your agent is telling me. Because that's what happens sometimes. We will go and we'll stand in front of the player and the family to say, listen, this is what we demand from the club. And if they're not able to do that, sometimes they try and go behind us directly to the family to say, no, your agent is not negotiating in good faith, or your agent is doing this and that. And they're not knowing that the family already knows, because I keep them, up to date with everything that we do. So that's one thing that we do, mainly just to cover our bases, just so that we're all singing the same song, speaking the same language, and kind of so that we're all in unison. Because at the end of the day, we are there for the well-being of the player, the athlete, and to make sure that they, become the best possible version of themselves.
Yeah, and the relationship between you as agents and your company as agents and the clubs, how is it or how should it be? In fact, how is it and how should it be?
I mean, how the relation is, let's say, between the agent, the clubs, the federation.
No, between the agents and the clubs.
The agents and the clubs.
Without
that's a bit of a it's a bit of a tricky one, mainly because the clubs normally look out for their own best interest. So I'm not going to name any clubs or whatever it is, but a lot of the clubs look out for their best interest. But then there are other clubs that look out for the players, best interest. So it just all depends. I personally feel, I understand the club that looks out for their own interest, because at the end of the day, they're looking for growth, they're looking for wins, they're looking to progress, right? But for me, they're not my clients, the players are, at the end of the day. So I kind of understand both. I understand the ones who want the players to go out because then that's best for the player to be in a completely professional setting whereby they eat, sleep, drink football or sport or whatever it is, whatever sport that they're doing. But unfortunately, we just don't have the infrastructure right now here in Namibia for that. And we don't have, we don't have the infrastructure for that right now. So unfortunately, we have to take them out and hopefully they come back and represent Namibia. And that's basically how we push Namibia to another standard.
Yeah. In terms of the relationship now with the FA, because when a player moves from Namibia to, let's say, Botswana, they will need an international clearance, the ITC.
Yes.
What relationship do you have with the FA?
We have really good relationships with the FA. Starting from when I first entered Namibia, they're one of the first people that I contacted, along with Colin Benjamin, along with Ricardo Manetti. One of the first things that I did as soon as I arrived from Finland was to meet the people within the sporting fraternity. So also within coming back for internships and all of that, I've grown close to a few people within the FA, and we have really good relations. Any problem that I have, I normally go to them early with the problem, looking for a solution. I don't really want to only just lean on them, when I absolutely need them, but rather, building that relationship over time. And the relationship is extremely good.
How many players are signed under your agency?
We have about 12 players.
12 players.
Yes,
Would you mind naming them?
over across different sports as well.
Oh, okay.
So we have 2 players for basketball. We have 1 player in netball.
So you represent basketball as well?
Yeah.
Netball.
But the only thing with basketball is that we cannot get them teams, but we rather try and market them because we don't have the license yet. We don't have the NBA license, and we also don't have the FIBA license. The reason why I haven't gotten the NBA license yet is because the NBA is still under negotiation with the Players Union. And they're coming up with a collective bargaining agreement. And even though they do have one in place currently, I don't necessarily want to study that and then have to want to study another one. Again, so I'd rather just wait, and by next year that new collective bargaining agreement should have been signed. And then I can finally now study that 700-page document and then pay that $2,500 US. And that's you pay that whether you pass or not. So with the basketball, we have to be a little bit more strategic and careful to say, no, I'm not the agent, I'm a manager. So I'd rather use that to say, okay, we've sent them now. They've been to Botswana, I believe last month. They played at the BAL qualification. So BAL is the Basketball Africa League, which is an extension of the NBA. So we've had 2 players that went to go represent Namibia there. And then we have a netball player, Monica Gomez as well. And then we have a few footballers. We also have 1 rugby player, Peter Diergaard. He was also part of the initial squad to go to the World Cup. Unfortunately, he got injured 2 weeks before the World Cup, and then he had to rest those 2 weeks, and then they chose somebody else. But he was on that list of players where if somebody got injured, he was supposed to go. But then they never actually called him up. But with Peter, what we've done is we've actually sent him out to Czech Republic on 2 separate occasions, and now we're currently working on a deal for him to go somewhere else, which I cannot disclose.
Oh, okay. No, that's fair enough.
So our football players, we have quite a few football players. We have Jocelyn Kamatuka, Chulu or Edmar Kamatuka as well. We have Ngero Katua. We have Paulus as well. We have Hiha, who plays also for UNAM. We have Nani, who plays for Civics. We have a lot of players for football. We actually recently also got Awilo, so we're trying to get him also something, or trying to get him into a better space. And so we basically have a full team of players that we're trying to get, and then we're trying to help.
You mentioned Chulu.
Yes, Edmar
Kamatuka.
Yes.
What happened between him and Stars now?
I think
we knew that he was at Stars, and
yes.
in fact, the Stars project was around him.
Yes.
At that particular moment in time.
Yes.
And you see, I'm even holding because this is an
You're gonna
interesting
get me in trouble, yeah.
So we knew that the project the Stars was around him.
Yes.
What happened?
Okay, so initially the contract ended, right? Because
Yes.
a lot of them, all the players were just under 1 year contracts.
1 year contracts,
right? They released a few players, I think, at least via statement. They
Yes,
released
6 of them,
Yeah, they released a few players, but not technically because they didn't actually release them. They just put a statement out. But then Chulu, let me just call him Chulu because I'm used to calling
Chulu, yes,
Edmar
yes, yes.
It's the government name.
Yeah.
No? So Chulu was now on that, and we initially wanted him to sign back with Stars.
Yeah.
You know, obviously he's comfortable there. He won the league there, played extremely well.
And
was
they're going to play in
national team.
Africa?
Yeah, that was must be a unique selling point. But how we had to look at it was, okay, they do have Africa, African Champions League, which is good platform, but it's not guaranteed to get into the group stages. You still have to play qualifications, and that's now two
stages.
Yeah, 2 stages. So obviously 2 legs on each stage. So we're like, okay, just now obviously good, best case scenario, he goes through, he plays there. But looking at the squad, we didn't think or we didn't feel like they would get through to the group stages, right? And with regards to the negotiation, I don't know if it's too much or whatever it is, but they wanted him to sign a 2-year contract. So now for us, we were of the mindset of, okay, we want him to stay here, but we don't want him to stay here for 2 years. And if it is for 2 years, we would like to be within the negotiation to now, to now help him leave. Because obviously it's good for him to be here now, but we don't want him here forever. And he's, at the time, I think he was 20 years old. He just turned 21 now recently. So we were like, okay, if you're there for 2 years, you turn 21 now, 22, 23. Now you're 23 years old and you're trying to get into the European market. It becomes very difficult. So we just wanted him here for 1 year, playing the national team and all of that, and then we'll be able to take him out. But they were very adamant on the 2-year contract. However, they were very, they tried to negotiate in terms of being like, okay, we can give you a team option whereby the team can now decide if they want to keep him or not. But we wanted a player option where the player can decide at the end of the day, because my client is the player, it's not the club,
it's not the club
at the end of the day. So that's where talks kind of stalled. We tried to, reach out to, the management at Stars, but they just wouldn't hear us. We tried to go to the offices, they still wouldn't. We tried to SMS, we tried to email, we tried to contact them at all means to try and say, listen, let's get to the table. We all want the best for Chulu. We all want the best for Stars. Let's come to an agreement. Unfortunately,
so it wasn't the issue of money.
No, it wasn't money.
Okay, because I was told he was demanding.
Yeah, that's what I'm also hearing. But this is the truth. This is what happened.
Okay.
It had nothing to do with money. It had everything to do with the amount of years on the contract.
Okay.
Mainly because Chulu is one of the lucky ones in terms of like family and stability and all of that, whereby he's not necessarily driven by money right now. Even though, of course, he's a good player, we do want for him to get the best contract possible. But it was definitely not about money. It was only about the years. They wanted 2 years. We wanted 1 year. If it was going to be a 2 year, we wanted the player option. They wanted the team option, and then just talks broke down there. We approached UNAM, and they were more than willing to just give him a 1 year contract. They were more than willing to say, listen, if a team comes, we're not going to be extremely, demanding in terms of that. And also, what also played a huge role in our decision was the fact that at Stars, even though it was different management, it was under Sydney. At Stars, they, Chulu's older brother, Sean, was there. He played there. He was under a similar situation whereby he signed a 2 year contract, or he signed a multi-year contract. A team from the MLS really liked him and really wanted him. And African Stars priced him at $1 million.
Sure.
So
even play at 1 million.
Yes.
US dollars.
Yes. So then that's when now that MLS team walked away, and Sean never ended up going anywhere. So within that same family, they've already been in that situation. So we didn't want that same situation to now repeat itself. And we've also expressed that exact same sentiment. And they said, no, we're different management. And we said, okay, cool, you're different management. But now at least allow us to sit at the table if a team comes. And they didn't want that. So
they wanted to negotiate themselves?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So that's where now the last straw was. And we were just like, you know what? I think the best option is UNAM, mainly because of the Ronnie Carnello being there, and obviously him being a national team coach. So at least that standard of training will always be there. Number one, number two, it's UNAM, so they have their own facilities. Also, we must also understand that I'm not just on the football side, I'm also on his branding side. And on the branding side, there's a whole university around him. You understand? So we can now market him differently in terms of getting to the people. So you get the numbers up, you get the followers. That's when we now bring the sponsorship deals, the endorsement deals. You bring his numbers up because you're not only thinking about football now.
Yeah. So when you take on a player, you take them as a package, a holistic package.
Exactly.
Their footballing situation and their
marketability. Marketability. To try and get them now those endorsement deals so that they have multiple streams of income. Yeah. Gone are the days where players just get what they get
with whatever
and then that's
from
it.
The club.
We want them to think differently, whereby they can have something from Nike, from Adidas, or whoever it is, and then also maybe a KFC deal or whatever it is, because we see that with Christine Boma and Beatrice Masalingi, whereby you see Christine Boma now on the sugar. Marathon sugar and things like that. So that's the vision that we're coming in at it with. And a lot of our athletes, we don't necessarily just sign anybody. We try and sign the best of the best. We try and get athletes who want bigger than themselves, So a lot of the times when we ask them what their 5-year plan is. We ask them, what interest they have outside of sports, because obviously what's on the field, it speaks for itself. These guys are great. These guys are good. So now we just need to try and get them to another level.
Okay, we will take a short break, and when we come back, we still continue with the discussion that we're having with Peter Haufiku. He is a football player agent. He's a basketball player agent. He's a netball player agent. In fact, he's a sports agent. Let's put it that way. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Please don't forget to like and follow us on all our platforms. And remember, this is not the only podcast that we have here. We also have the Industry Loops that comes out every Friday with NSK, where we look at entertainment and stuff. So keep watching that as well and keep supporting us. But today we are with Peter Haufiku. He's a sports agent. Earlier on, you spoke to me, Peter, about that you studied sports science. And what I've noticed in this country is especially for our national teams, we don't have sports science people. We don't have dietitians. I'll tell you a story. One national team was camping. I won't say which one, whether it's football, rugby, or cricket, and I happened to be in the vicinity of them.
So at least I know it's one of the three.
No, I'm just saying it was a national team, and one of the players came. We're having breakfast, and one of the players came. I'm a big guy. You would expect me to eat a mountain of food, but that player came and picked up. It was a buffet kind of thing, and he picked up for breakfast a plate that when you put it in front of him, you could not see the person on the other side, and it was just meat. No proteins, no vegetables. I mean, no, nothing else but just meat. And I looked at that player. I was thinking, it was high protein. Sorry, I looked at that player and I was thinking to myself, 2 days time, this guy is going to be on the field representing the country with that kind of meat that he has eaten. We don't have dietitians, like sports dietitians, people who can actually tell the players what to eat. And sometimes it puts us at a disadvantage. For example, a team like a rugby team, when you're front row, you need big guys, and they need to eat certain type of food for them to become big. Then you also have gymnastics. They need to be lighter, or cyclists, they need to be lighter. They need to eat a certain type of diet. We don't have dietitians. We don't have sports scientists. We don't have sports psychologists. How important are those for the performance of the teams?
Extremely, extremely important. And, it's a whole team that basically makes one player great. So you basically need that in every single sport. But you can also understand for this player in particular, I don't know him personally or anything like that, but, maybe sometimes they don't necessarily have that type of buffet at home or anything like that. So they see that and then, they get extremely excited when it comes to that in terms of, the consumption. But we definitely need, especially sports psychologists, mainly because that's one of these subjects that I also lecture, but it's extremely important to get into the mind of an athlete because just as important is it for him to train, physically, mentally is also extremely important, being able to play in in a rough environment with a big crowd, or being able to play in, you know, an arena where there's absolutely no one there, or, you know, taking a penalty and a free kick in a time when the team needs a goal. All of these things are extremely important, but it does come with a price and a budget. So these are all things that we do have to consider in terms of, you know, when we do put our budget there, it needs to be a priority as well. And yeah, I honestly feel like
would you say now each federation should look for their own sports psychologist, sports scientist, you know, dietitians?
Yes and no. I feel like we can maybe have a team of this, because a lot of tournaments, we don't necessarily have too many tournaments, and not a lot of our teams go at the same time. So if we can have a team together that is, you know, a dietitian, a psychologist, you know, sports scientist as well, kind of, you know, go from, you know, one national team to another, that would also be great. But of course,
should it start at national team level, or it should start at club level?
I think it should start at club level, but I know that the clubs don't necessarily have the budget for that. So I believe that, you know, the how do I say this? The most likely teams to actually be able to afford it is national teams, unfortunately. So in my opinion, it should start at youth level, you know, and then at club level, and then eventually at the national team level. But it seems like we're working, you know, from up to down.
Yeah. Moving on now to maybe the issue of you having studied this and
Yes.
having gone to the ministry to do your attachment.
Yes.
How come you're not being used by the ministry for some of these things?
You tell me. I've applied for a lot of jobs there. So I don't.
And what has been the response?
Sometimes it's overqualified. Sometimes I would be told that I was overqualified. Other times I would just be told that they went with another candidate. So that's a question that you'll have to, you know, sit down with Mr. Freddie Muya or Miss Manuel to try and find out, or even, you know, the Deputy Minister, Honorable Emma. But yeah, I have spoken to them. I've brought my CV there multiple times, spoke to the ED of sports as well. He wouldn't even sit with me. So it comes to a point where, you know, I stopped begging and rather just went into creating my own lane. And that's how I ended up with the sports agency, and then eventually now at the university as well.
But from your sports agent's perspective now, can you take a proposal, let's say to the Football Association, the rugby or the cricket, and say, I do this. Can you recommend that I be attached to you by the ministry? You don't need to pay me.
Yeah.
The ministry then comes in and foster the bill.
That could be possible, but right now our focus is on the individual athletes and trying to do that for our athletes that we do have. Even though it's just a small sample size, we are only 2 in the company right now. We're trying to do the best for our athletes. But, you know, eventually I think once they are out and we have a little bit more time, I think it'll be definitely something that we would be interested in, and something that we could definitely provide.
And in terms of developing other agents, you know, sports agents with not really similar qualifications, but with qualifications that can, you know, add value to the sports fraternity in the country. How far are you besides the lecturing part?
Oh, do you mean like with regards to integrating them within the...
I mean, developing them, you know, having maybe courses, crash courses, to say, this 2 weeks we are going to be teaching you about the rules of the rules that FIFA has put, for example, for you to be a football agent.
I mean, obviously I work day to day with these students, so that's what I do daily with them. But with the people within the industry, I've also hosted a few master classes as well, whereby I taught them, let's say, sports sponsorship, how to look for sponsorship, how to go about it. Unfortunately, that got cut short. But I have done, I think, 2 or 3 master classes in different aspects of sports. But this was generally for the sports administrators and the people within sports, because the students that I have already get that on a daily basis. And I don't necessarily only lecture at NUST, even though that's now my primary, you know, lecturing location. But I have also lectured at UNAM. I've also lectured at Ames School of Sports. So it's all across the board. I've also done some work with Triumphant as well, who also have a sports project. So with regards to the students themselves, I'm already interacting with them. I know almost every single sports management student that there is here in Namibia. So we do try and do that. We also had a few interns that have come through us, that have come to work with us for a couple of months. Although it's a little bit difficult because it is a startup, so they end up doing a lot more than what it is that we're supposed to do. And I can be the CEO, but at the end of the day, I'm also making coffee, I'm also the receptionist, I'm also all of this. So as glamorous as it seems to be the founder and CEO of a company, especially when it's still coming up, there's a lot of different things that you're going to have to do, and we try and get our students ready for that. Unfortunately, the curriculum sometimes is not necessarily conducive to real life, because as I said, it's a little bit too theoretical. It's not practical enough. I spoke about the education system in Finland. What we would do is that we would study a subject, let's say for 2 weeks, right? And then the next 4 weeks we're using to implement it directly into whatever sport it is. So if you're doing coaching, you will learn about it on the books for 2 weeks, and then after they would get you a student or another athlete, and you will have to work with that athlete for an extended period of time. You do tests in the beginning, you do tests after, and you see the progression of that. Whereas I don't believe that we have that here. I am trying in terms of my capacity of being a lecturer. Every single year they do ask the industry how they see it fit. Luckily, my suggestion last time was to get digital marketing instead of traditional marketing, because no one puts up billboards anymore or anything. It's all digital now. So I'm trying in terms of my own capacity to try and make change within the educational system, but I think we need to be a lot more practical and less theoretical.
As an agent, let's say I'm a player and I want to sign under you.
Yes.
How much percentage do you take?
You're counting my pockets.
No, I'm not counting your pockets. I just I'm just looking at players, because most of the players, I'll tell you, they're afraid of agents, because they will tell you that this agent ate my money, the agent is just here to eat my money. And a lot of families also, I'm sure they've expressed that fear to you.
100%. And it gives us a bad rep because we're coming into this. But how I always like to say it is that I don't necessarily need the money from the agency right now. I'm making money via lecturing, via masterclasses, via different things that I'm trying to do. I'm also part of a gin company, believe it or not, Namibian gin. So I do have multiple streams of income that I don't necessarily only rely on sports. So normally if you just rely on sports, that's when you become a little bit dodgy, because now your child is sick, he needs medication. And now you see a player that doesn't necessarily know what he's doing, so you take a couple of bucks here, a couple of bucks there. So I always think that people who kind of steal, it's out of necessity, whereas I'm not in that position right now. But with regards to the percentages, how we kind of work it is now there's different rules with regards to the FIFA rules. So we are only allowed to take up to 10% from the signing on bonus, and then from there we only take about a 5% from the player's monthly salary. So then that's now the cost that that we have. Some other agents do it differently. They take more of a percentage on the selling on and take less from the players. But our local players we don't take anything from. So right now we're not actually making money from our local players, mainly because the salaries are so low that it would be criminal to take money from them right now.
Somebody's getting like 500,
3,000 or whatever it is, and now you have to now take 10% of that. They will feel that, whereas that kind of keeps us more hungry, because now we have to get them opportunities outside, because then we can.
But then that will also push you to say, look, this 150 is not doing anything to my pocket.
Exactly.
I need 1,500, so let me get 15,000 for this guy.
Exactly. So that kind of pushes us now as well, and that's also some advice that I got from my lecturer, who is Luka Modric's agent. He said, if I don't charge Luka Modric, who are you to charge your players? Especially on the local market, because they don't earn enough. They don't earn enough for me to take, and it will be, it will be criminal for me to take money from them when now they don't necessarily have enough for themselves.
Have you sat down with clubs to say, like, you introduce yourself, and the clubs get to know you, and just to explain your program, because most of these clubs, they don't know that. We saw recently there was a tug of war between a player with African Stars and Nampol.
Yes.
And if you speak to that player, you can see clearly there was no agents involved. He just went with the flow.
Yes. The one with the more zeros at the back.
Yes, he looked at the more zeros at the back and he thought, let me go there.
Yeah.
And then halfway through there, he thought, okay, those zeros, maybe they are there for now, but then my future, what am I going to do?
Exactly.
On the other side, if I retire from this, I can.
Yeah.
So those kind of situations, as agents, how do you then mitigate them to say we don't want them to happen?
I mean, it just comes in when you speak with your athlete. How we try and mitigate that particular situation is we don't get the player involved at all. There are times where some of the teams will be like, listen, we want to talk to the player. We say, no, you're talking to us. We're speaking on behalf of the player. Because they can now have some type of way about me, and I'm fine with that. I can withstand that myself. But I don't want the player now to, feel this type of way and then have to go to training and deal with these, like the higher ups on a daily basis. I'd rather them face me, and then the player literally just has to focus on the sport. But with regards to that's particular question in terms of the zeros and all of that, we always try and look at not necessarily only the money, but the amount of years on the contract, the incentives, bonuses in terms of goal bonuses, assists. If it's a defender, clean sheets and things like that. So we try and see, okay, this is the base salary, but how do we try and get this a little bit higher with some performance incentives as well?
Yeah, but the other question that I'd asked, have you introduced yourself to the clubs in Namibia?
Not all the clubs.
You feel it's not necessary?
Mainly with the clubs that I deal with. So if I have a player there, or if I have a player going from there, I do speak to them, but I don't necessarily speak to all the clubs.
So when clubs approach you looking for the player, what do they say?
They just ask me for a right back.
Yeah, let me give you a scenario. I'm a club from South Africa. I'm looking for a left-footed center back.
Yes.
What specs must I give you besides that I'm looking for a defender who's left-footed?
Yeah, there are different things. You can also look at age. Age is a very big one. International caps is also a very big one. So international appearances. The other one is obviously height, weight is also very important. So it's very good also to know about the playing style that they want. They want a left-footed center back. Do they want somebody that's strong in the air? Do they want somebody that's a little bit lower to the ground, a little bit stronger? What type of profile do they need when it comes to that? And then we try and look at the players that we do have. If none of them fit that bill, then we go into the national team to try and see, okay, which type of players fit this mold. If nothing in the senior national team, then we try and look at the under 23, under 21, and then we try and give the best possible player for that. But recently we've started now also looking into players in other countries. We have an agent in Nigeria now that is scouting for us. We have a player agent in Ethiopia, also looking for different opportunities, Kenya, and then also South Africa now. So our vision was Namibia, but I don't believe our Namibian players are ready for the big jump to the European market or to the South American market. Eventually they will be, but a lot of the players who are here locally now, we're trying to get them into South Africa, into Botswana. Then we're trying to help the players from South Africa, from Botswana, to now move out. So it becomes kind of like a conveyor belt, whereby we don't necessarily send players who are not ready. Because at the end of the day, as an agent, your reputation is everything. If you bring a player that is not ready for that level, you maybe bring one or two players, then that connection is completely gone. Because if they don't cut it. But if you send 2 or 3 great players, you don't even need to send a profile the next time. You just send the player themselves. So we're at an intricate part whereby we're still very new. We've only sent a few players out. We need to be extremely careful with who we do send out.
I asked that question because clubs would also know their players. The coaches will know their players and say, look, I have this player. I believe at 19 he can go and play in Scandinavia, for example. He can play in those small Scandinavian countries. So as an agent, don't you think it's imperative that you must have a relationship with all the clubs?
No, I think it's imperative. It's something that I would kind of, I mean, the clubs that I currently have relationships with, obviously African Stars, we have UNAM, we have Julinho, we have Civics, we have Tigers as well. So it's something that, you know, will generically happen. But why I don't necessarily want to go jump straight into that is because every club wants to sell their players. So every club will now tell you, I have the next Cristiano Ronaldo. You understand? So every club, every agent, every person, so you always have to take it with a pinch of salt. The amount of, like, you know, DMs that I get on Instagram to say, I'm a great player, I do this, I do that. I ask them, what team do you play for? They don't have a team. That already tells me something. You understand? So you mustn't always take what people say at face value. You need to always take it with a pinch of salt. And then what I always ask is, when are you playing? Let me come and watch. Because I don't want to send players out based off another person's reputation or another person's, you know, point of view. I'd rather see it myself, because these are people that I know, that I've went to school with, that, you know, I've built relationship with over time. So
in terms of player discipline,
yes,
off the
that's
field,
a big one.
off the field, how is it? How do you deal with that? You know, we know there are players, Namibian players. They love their meat, they love their alcohol,
yes,
and they love their women.
That's very unfair. Yeah, they're young. How we try and deal with that is, we just try and speak to them, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be with them 24 hours a day, right? So we try and get them to think about it in terms of, this is my career. It's a very short career. Football is not very long. If you're lucky, you play 10 years. You understand?
At the top.
At the top. So these guys need to understand that at the end of the day, all I can do is present you know, the teams. I can present agents, I can bring people to the game, but I can't go and kick the ball for you. But then also to understand that at the end of the day, you know, people know about reputation. They'll come here, the big teams, they'll come in, they'll speak to Colin, they'll speak to all of these different people, and they'll find out about these things. So if you are going to do that, rather just do it in the comfort of your home, and try and do it as little as possible. So we don't try and baby them in terms of, you're not allowed to drink alcohol ever. We'd rather say, okay, instead of drinking that whole six-pack, just drink one beer and go to sleep. You understand? Try and, like, you know, reduce it in that sense. Because if you tell somebody no, what they will do is they will do it twice as much. That's at least yes, that's my own opinion on that. But at the end of the day, we just try and speak to them. They are adults. We can't follow them everywhere. At least I know that when I go out and I see my athlete, they must just go home. You know, so it's one of those things where it's like kind of like a big brother, small brother relationship, and they kind of know where to draw the line. It's a bit easier with the older players, even though they do also partake in this, but they know their own limits a lot better than the younger ones. But at the end of the day, we just, as I said, we just have to tell them, listen, this is your life, this is your career, and this is not helping you get to the next level. You need to also see your friends. Are they the ones who are trying to tell you, listen, don't go out? They're trying to protect you, or they're the ones that are forcing you to go out and try and go out? So try and speak to the friends, try and speak to the family, try and speak to the players themselves. And at the end of the day, I can't be there with them 24/7. It just comes out down to personal choice.
Peter, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for
giving us time, and you know, giving us such a huge lecture. Personally, I learned a lot, because there are a lot of things that I didn't understand. And good luck with the company. And we hope to have you again next time.
Thank you so
when
much.
you have sold one of our Ronaldos to big clubs overseas.
Yes, hopefully very soon.
All right, that's the end of episode 4 of our podcast series. As I always say, please do like all our social media pages and follow us. We'll be back again next time with another great guest. Bye-bye.